Welcome, everyone, to another session of TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we are going to be taking a look at how to simplify and streamline price changes and also take advantage of some auto pricing functions. As always, if you have any questions related to today's content, feel free to plug them into the questions option over along the right-hand side or the side of the screen. I'll be doing my best to monitor that and answer those as we go along. And yeah, it's an interesting morning so far. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we're using my music system as we have been doing so for the past X number of webinars. Again, I'll just give my little disclaimer. If you're not actually a music store, not a big deal. What we're looking at is the concepts rather than the content. So feel free to stick along, and hopefully this will all make sense for you, even if you're not a music store. So, excuse me. As most of you, I'm kind of looking at the attendee list today, and I think most of you have been attending most of these sessions, which is great. Thank you so much for your continued attendance and feedback with these sessions. I would wager that a fair number of you are probably somewhat familiar, if not fully familiar, with the inventory change program at this time, or what used to be known as SA and titles maintenance back in version 11. You probably recall that as kind of being the ultimate inventory utility for modifying things, including prices. So just to kind of have a refresher on that, underneath the inventory menu of modules, you would go to add change inventory, and then we would be bringing up change inventory. And when you're in change inventory, you can go ahead and pull up your item. I'm just going to bring up a good old RT14 valve oil here, and you are probably aware that you can go in version 12 to the locations tab, where you could then make any price adjustments that you so desire. Now, change inventory is great, but it can be a little clunky, and obviously there's a lot of things in here, which means there's also a lot of potential to inadvertently make a change that you didn't intend to make. For example, back here on the main tab, not only do we see all these main details, but we got descriptions, we've got categories, and if you don't realize that you changed something in there, when you ultimately hit save, now suddenly that save is applied to this item as a whole. And it's just like, oops, I didn't realize I changed the category or anything like that when I was kind of scrolling through here. So change inventory is great, but it can be a little too powerful sometimes. So what I'm going to show you are some alternates that can not only help control the amount of what you are able to change, but it can also streamline it, because coming into change inventory, you'd have to, as you saw, bring up the item and then go to the locations tab, make your changes, hit save, search for the next item. It's just kind of a one-by-one type process. There's a lot of mouse clicks involved. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a fairly straightforward utility. It's going to be in that same modules and inventory menu underneath the utilities menu now, and it'll be one of the first menu options in this listing. It'll be called change SKU details. Change SKU details is short and sweet and to the point. We can go ahead and pull up our RT14, and what you're seeing here are the details of this item, where we could go in, and if we wanted to quickly make a price adjustment, we could go right to the Our Price field. Now, do you notice how these fields are grayed out right now? In my opinion, one of the huge benefits of change SKU details, and furthermore, there's a change serial details program as well if you have any serialized inventory. The huge bonus of this program is you cannot possibly change something you did not intend to change. You have to first check mark the little checkbox next to that field in order to actually apply a change to it. You can see how once I check mark the checkbox next to our price, I could then go in and apply my changes. One other thing I'll mention here, while we're in these change SKU details programs, when you're on these price fields, if you weren't aware, you can press F6, that same F6 function that I've referred to time and time again in these webinars and in my trainings, that F6 is your friend. When you're in a price field like this, if you wanted to change the price to either a desired margin percentage or a percentage of retail, pressing F6 will give you a quick way to do that without having to break out the calculator, figure out all the formulas and do that. You could just say, as long as you've got the cost and a retail in there, you can do both of these functions. So I could say, well, I would prefer to have, let's say, a 40% margin on this. If I go ahead and hit enter, you'll see it comes out and it calculates exactly what would be a 40% margin, $3.08. Now, there's no rounding involved with this, so obviously we're getting to a specific margin, and then from there, if you wanted to tweak it to make it be nice and pretty, you could certainly do that. We could make this be, $2.99 or $3.49 like I was doing, or $3.25 like it originally was. But just kind of that idea. I thought I'd mention that too while we're here, since we're talking about making price changes. So this is one way of doing changes a little bit quicker. Basically, once you make your change, you can hit save, and then the cursor immediately goes back to the SKU field, and you could type in the next SKU, and then we could just go right down the list and make those modifications. However, if you have a lot of changes to make, let's say that a particular supplier has increased their prices across the board, and you want to go in and effectively make sure that you're not losing out on any money or anything like that. So stuff like that is definitely possible with a program in this same utilities menu known as change inventory pricing. So when we go into change inventory pricing, this program is very, very powerful. What this lets you do is this lets you search for groups of inventory. So starting up here at the top, we're going to select what type of inventory we want to adjust, either accessory inventory, serial inventory, or serial numbers. Remember that there's serialized SKUs and then there's the serial numbers underneath those serial SKUs. I'm going to stick with accessory inventory for now. You'll also notice there are options here to import changes as well. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Let's say that we wanted to then focus on a specific vendor that supplies these SKUs. This is all about that middle section now. You can see that basically what we can do is we can pick and choose certain types of criteria for focusing on our price changes. So we could either put in a model or category number or catalog number or serial range. We can put in a specific manufacturer. We can put in a specific vendor, a specific category and subcategory. We can go by selection code. We can go by a specific price level. Now, when it comes to this price level, the idea of this price level, this is still a filter. This is not what we are changing yet. We're going to see that down here in the bottom section. But if we want to say that we want to grab only inventory where a certain price level is within a certain price range, then that's the idea of this price level to select. Keep in mind that we're still between these two divider lines. Anything within these two dividers is effectively search and selection criteria. Once we've made our choices, though, let's say we go in and we want to do everything where that we get from Coast Wholesale. We can then come down here, and this is where we can now pick what price field we want to adjust. This is going to be on a price field by price field basis. So if there are multiple price fields, You may have to run this a couple of times, but the benefit of this is this could be doing a whole swath of inventory without having to do them one by one by one. So the trade-off is there for the better, in my opinion, and in my experience. So let's say we want to go ahead and do a price increase in the hour price field, which is your normal selling price field across the board for all products that we purchase from Coast. They've raised their prices 10%, so we're going to do that accordingly. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and say we want to just basically take what we already have and add 10% to it. So we're going to say that our adjustment type is a percent of our price, and we could come over here and make that be 110%. Below this, you'll see there are options here for whether or not we want to exclude discontinued items, if we would like to change rented serial items, if we were doing specifically serial number inventory and we wanted to make sure that those items that are currently out on rent, remember this would be rent to own or rent to rent, not any kind of sales contract. If we wanted to adjust those prices as well. If we wanted to change used serial items, we could do that. If we wanted to change specifically refurbished items, I should mention that in version 12, there are now 3 statuses of inventory: new, used, and refurbished. And then if you wanted to print barcode labels. So the whole idea with this is if we are doing a price adjustment, it might not be a bad idea to print barcode labels as part and parcel of this process, so that way not only can you see what was changed, but then you can take those immediate labels, you can go out and you can affix them to your products so that you can get that as quickly out to the floor as possible. When you hit proceed with this, what this will do is this will bring you to a second tab for price change review. And it's going to basically show you what the changes are. So in this case, we've got 2 items, one at each location. These are music stands that we get from Coast. I picked a nice small category just to kind of let you see the example of this. It's showing us what the cost, or in this case, the weighted cost is, the current retail price, the old hour price, and now it'll be showing us the new hour price. You can see it's basically doing that math like I was mentioning. Now, something that you may not be aware of is that if you wanted to go down this list and tweak them from here, you can click right into this field. See how when I click into any other field, it is what it is. But I could come over here, and if I really wanted to, I could make a price adjustment right there. Now, whether or not you want to do that is certainly up to you. It's a nice way to, if nothing else, see a list top to bottom and see where you're coming out to as far as a formula, and then you could tweak it from there. And if nothing else, it's still a more straightforward way of doing a lot of, in this case, manual changes. Would be more automated if we weren't changing them line by line. But at least that way you're kind of seeing a top to bottom list of SKUs so that you could go in and make those adjustments. Let me know if that makes sense. Ultimately, when you hit save, that will go out and make those adjustments. I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to do a different one, one that I know has a little bit more inventory. Let's go down to, let's see, let's do Hal Leonard. I think there's some more products in there as well. Yeah, there we go. So you can see how in this case, I left everything else the same. I just changed who the vendor was. And we can see we've got some products coming up here. Now, these are all musical books and things like that for those who aren't in the music industry. So you can see how this is coming up with new price points here for, again, a 10% increase. This one is very straightforward. You can see how it's originally 30 cents. Now it's going to make it be 33 cents. $3.95 goes to $4.35, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea of the inventory price change. Now, if you were going to be, let's say that you spent some time doing a spreadsheet of the changes that you would like to actually import. Let's take a look at how that'll function. You'll notice when I come up and I change this to say import accessory inventory, some of these things have grayed out automatically down at the bottom. So you'll notice that no longer am I basically going to have options for excluding or changing specific types of inventory, discontinued or rented, used or refurbished items. Basically, the idea with this then is when I click proceed, it wants to know what is the file that I want to import. And you can see that all it really needs is the column A in the Excel spreadsheet would need to have the SKU column. So that's basically the idea of change inventory pricing. Now, let's take a look at a template, because actually, if I remember correctly, let's go ahead and give a template here. We'll just save it right to our desktop, and we'll just call this price change template. But yeah, basically, if you wanted to have a spreadsheet of those, then they'll be right there. Let's go ahead and go out to my desktop, minimize AIM here so that I can get to that. There we go. So there's the price change. And what we should be seeing here is basically just a very simple template of what it's going to be looking for in that file. And as you can see, all it really is looking for is just a column A. So what we're really doing is we're not necessarily looking for the prices within the template itself. We're just looking for the SKUs where that template would be, or the SKUs to affect as far as what price changes we're going to be having made back here in the change inventory pricing. We're still looking for specifically these details here as far as what the changes will be that will be made. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you were manipulating multiple price fields, then you'll just kind of do this one by one by one. So after you hit proceed and change, let's say your R price, let's say you also want to do that for prices A, B, C, minimum, etc. You would just run this once for each price field that you were modifying. Now, this does also tie back to a webinar that I did a few sessions ago for the inventory export import routine. All of these details are available to adjust there as well if you really wanted to be, nitty gritty about the specific prices that you were adjusting. This is meant to be more of a formulaic approach without having to go through, for lack of a better term, the rigmarole of exporting, adjusting, and then importing those changes back in. So let me know if that makes sense. This is a very powerful utility, and it can save you a lot of time if you are using formulaic adjustments like that. The last thing I want to talk about is probably the biggest change between versions 11 and 12, and that's going to be about auto pricing. If you have noticed when going in and receiving inventory, or even in the change SKU details program here, if I remember correctly, there's these auto price buttons that pop up every now and then regarding changing pricing. Well, what is that all about? Because you might notice if I come in here and try and do an auto price, it's going to not really do anything. I'm clicking and clicking and clicking, and nothing's happening. You can see how it pops up with this little tooltip here, letting us know this is going to be looking at auto price defaults. And prior to version 12, there was only one auto price formula that you could have. And the idea with that was basically whatever constituted the widest formula possible that you could do, whether that was potentially 30% of your inventory, 60% of your inventory, or even 100% of your inventory. Whatever you could use that was the best formula possible was your auto price formula, and that's all that you had. Now with version 12, you have the ability to set up multiple auto price formulas, and it can be based on categories and subcategories and other types of filters. So let's take a look at that. We're going to go into maintenance and into inventory, and we're going to find the program called Maintain Auto Price Defaults. And for those of you who prefer the drop-down menus, maintenance, inventory, and maintain auto price defaults, especially because it's been added for some time, but if you were right out of the starting gate 2 years ago with version 12, when we still had the variable for it. It wasn't in here, so you might not have the button if you didn't specifically add it. And that's kind of holds true for all of these customizable touchscreen menus. So in the case of Autoprice defaults, the idea here is that we can have a table of Autoprice options. So let's say we want to have, let's just say, accessories. So just kind of giving a basic description there. Then we could go in and we could go into, let's say, the band and orchestra accessories, and we could, let's specifically target the lubricants. We don't necessarily have to filter by all of these options, but I'll just kind of use that as an example here. Now, let's say that we want to have a specific calculation. So we want it to be a percentage of cost, either a margin or a markup. If you're unfamiliar with the difference, basically the margin takes the profit into consideration. And then we can go in and we could calculate off of a cost margin. So let's say that we want our price to be a 40% margin. Maybe we want the minimum price to be, let's say, 20%. And let's just throw in some numbers here. Let's just say that this is going to be 35, 30, and 25. And we'll go ahead and we'll hit save on that. Now, back in the change inventory or the change SKU details program with this saved, I'll go ahead and just close that just to keep the screen a little bit cleaner. Let's go back now into modules and inventory, utilities, and change SKU details. And we'll pull up our RT14 here, which happens to be in that category of lubricants. And keep an eye on the prices here. So the current cost is $1.85. The current our price is $2.99, $3.25, $3.25, $3.25, and they are what they are. There is no minimum price. When we click Auto Price, you can see that it's gone ahead and done the math for me here as far as what we were looking to have happen from that formula. So it now shows 308, 231, 285, 264, and 247. So that way you can go in and with one formula, basically you could tweak your products that way. Same thing holds true if you're just using the receive inventory program. So if we close out of here, and if we go back into add change inventory and receive inventory, if you're using this program as your means of receiving products, let's go ahead and bring up a slightly different item, RT15. And let's say we wanted to make adjustment on here. We could go ahead and click the auto price. And it did it really fast, but basically it's gone ahead and made those adjustments for me as far as all of these price fields for me. So based on the formulas that you create in the auto price area, this can help to speed up your desired price points for these products. And if I remember correctly, that is also available. I don't know if I have any open purchase orders here to actually receive. So I don't know if I can actually show anything. No, I don't. But there is also technically an auto price button on the item detail screen here. So if you were using the purchase orders program and you wanted to make sure that your prices were in line with any cost changes or anything like that, you've got the auto price available as part of the item detail, even at the time of receiving inventory. And if I'm not mistaken, too, it's also available back to the, if you've been in attendance with some of our accounts payable webinars that we've done, where we've gone in and shown how to reconcile inventory to accounts payable invoices. If you needed to go back and adjust the cost that the item was received at, you can technically adjust prices there, too, and auto price is available as well. So, auto pricing, it's not just for the the largest percentage of inventory anymore. You could set up multiple auto price formulas for all of your inventory if you so desire, just to keep it, that KISS concept for not only you, but any staff that you have on hand that you just want to make sure that they're empowered to help to maintain this stuff and you don't have to do it all for them. And again, that was in maintenance, inventory, and it'll be specifically called maintain auto price defaults. It now has that whole table where you can go in and add as many auto price options as you desire. For those of you who are coming from version 11 into version 12, if you did have one set up, if I remember correctly, that will convert into this table. And it will more than likely have the category and subcategory be empty. I believe the only minimum options that you need, are a description and a calculation type. So I just basically went ahead to try and add a new one, and anywhere where these exclamation points pop up are the minimum details needed for the form that's on screen. So I could call this my general auto price. Not that I really need the word auto price. And I could make this be, let's say, a percentage of retail, and make this be, let's say, 95 and 75. And then we can make that be 90, 85, and 80. And so I could have that as a more generic auto price. And when you're using that auto price function, what it will do is it will find the most specific auto price default it can find based on these criteria: category, subcategory, and vendor. So I could have one that is for all band and orchestra accessories, not just specifically lubricants. I could then have a specific one for the lubricants that would override the more generic one that was category only, which is still overriding this one that is sans any kind of category, subcategory, or vendor. So it's always going to find the most specific auto price formula it can use. So hopefully that's been helpful. And let me know if there's any questions on these, hopefully, faster and better ways of keeping your pricing up to date. We do have 2 more weeks of webinars, or is it just 1 more week of webinars at this point? I guess the month of May is closing out. So there's still a webinar coming up this Friday, which is going to be on, if I remember correctly, let's actually just go ahead and do what I've done the past couple of webinars. We will go out to tritechretail.com. And this will always be a good reminder of where you can go to see the latest webinars coming up, as well as register for them. So on our website, the member portal, you'll go to where it says sign up for webinars. Click on the free webinars link. And upcoming this week, we have the Paying Vendors with Credit Cards webinar. So we'll be going into some strategies on that. Next week, after Memorial Day, Tuesday, we will be looking at some customer financing functions. So basically when customers are being given the option of financing through a third party, where the party is going to pay you, and the customer will ultimately enter into some kind of payment agreement with the financier. And then we'll wrap up the month with looking at some scheduler tactics, looking at different ways you can process your customer invoicing and instructor invoicing, how to best handle makeups, and other best practices that you may find handy. We will be continuing to do webinars into the months of June and July and so forth. So if there's any suggestions of possible webinar topics that you'd like us to see do for you, let me know. You can send me an email to training@tritechretail.com. And I'll be more than happy to take those suggestions and turn them into webinars. And if there was any questions that didn't get asked here, maybe you didn't think of it until after the session has ended, feel free to shoot me an email as well. I'll be more than happy to reach back out to you with a reply. Thanks everyone for attending another session of TriTech University. We appreciate all of your patronage during this time. We don't take that for granted, and we will stay in touch with you and see you next session.